Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another online battle today. In this one, I take the Vampire Counts into battle against the Beastmen led by Sir X. Manfred rides into battle with the Curse of Undeath, Life Leeching, the Hunger, Sword of Unholy Power, Master of the Black Arts, Undeath Resurgent, Invocation of Nehek, Raise Dead, and Wind of Death. His Necromancer rides in as well, as magical backup with Master of the Dead, the Curse of Undeath, Invocation of Nehek, and Raise Dead as well. I've got a single unit of Skeleton Spearmen to try pinning down enemy large units, and 3 units of Graveguard as I wasn't expecting too much heavy armor from my opponent. For heavy armor piercing and poison support, I've got 2 units of Crypt Horrors, and I'm hoping to shut down enemy cavalry and range support with my Blood Knights, and ideally, I'll get some rear charges to frighten his front line off as well. Finally, the Claw of Nagash comes in for the trickle damage, the constant regeneration, and for its sheer anti-infantry strength. Morgur leads the Beastmen with Apocalyptic Vision, Spirit Essence of Chaos, and the Stave of Ruinous Corruption. The Bray Shaman of Beasts has Wild Heart, Flock of Doom, the Amber Spear, and Arcane Conduit, while the Gorebull just has Blood Greed. 4 units of Goreherd with Shield will make quick work of anything I raise from the dead, while the 2 units of Bestigor Herd will cause a great deal of damage to the front line, and their heavy armor is cause for concern. The Giants and Minotaurs will also provide some serious heavy-hitting support, and it's all going to be armor-piercing as well, so pretty threatening for my army. Alright, as always, we're going to start with a conversation about deployment, and it's relatively simple from both sides of the field here, but we're going to start with my Vampire Counts. Again, the front line is just the 3 units of Graveguard, very simple layout there, and right behind them in the center we have the Skeleton Spearmen, so that if a Gorebull decides to get adventurous and pushes down the middle, I have these Spearmen to capture it in place, and then hopefully my Blood Knights can come in and take care of it. Then we've got my Crypt Horrors on either flank, again providing support to the front line with armor piercing and poison, while Manfred is in the center as well to provide similar support to the center, and the Necromancer maybe a little bit too far ahead, but I wanted to get maximum range from Raise Dead, though he does move around a little bit before lines engage. The Mortis Engine is all the way back here, the Claw of Nagash, and I want to be able to pick which flank, or if in the center it goes, but I do want to send it in as soon as possible, maybe send it in from the sides or the rears, whatever might be the case, but I need to get maximum use of its sort of radial ability of regeneration as well as damage. I would be foolish not to use that right away. Meanwhile, all the way to the left here, I do have both of my Blood Knights. I was a little worried that my opponent might try something, you know, planting some Senegor over here, pushing in early, something like that, so I wanted to keep these guys over here to shut it down. If they were over here, I wasn't as concerned because they would be visible all the way through, so I wanted to have these guys here to scout some of these trees over here. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the Beastmen. Again, relatively simple here as well. We've got a very clumped up army. It would be nice to get a Wind of Death in there. But we've got the Bestigor Herd sort of up front with the Giants leading the charge. They're a little bit slower, so I suppose trying to keep them up front so that they're able to engage first. We do also have the Minotaurs with shields in the middle, so a very bulky front there, able to cause a lot of damage from the get-go. Morgur the Shadowgrave is tucked in the middle there, and we do also have the Bray Shaman of Beast tucked in alongside the Gorebull. So again, very clumped up, and then this is a massive line of Goreherd with shields, again, able to push in and able to actually come in from the sides with like rear charges and things like that. So very clumped up together, but can spread out nicely and get a decent surround going. With all that taken care of, though, let's see how this battle breaks down. Now, right away, I do push forward. There's no reason to stay back. I waited a handful of seconds just to make sure that my winds were at the right amount, because I want to make sure I can get some Raise Deads off as well as a Wind of Death nice and early into the combat situation. And you'll see I do pull back the Necromancer, and I pull back Manfred as well. I don't need to send them up front. I don't want them to get caught out or engaged in any way that's unnecessary. And I also send Manfred off to the side nice and early. I am pushing him over here, and I want to try and come in from the side and blow that Wind of Death. I see that clump at the beginning, and I'm just like, well, that would be beautiful. So let's just speed it up a little bit, and you'll see I am pushing up in either direction there with my casters, but the moment he pushes his Goreherd off to the side here, I get a little nervous that he's going to bog down Manfred, and then I won't have the mobility. I'm not worried about the Goreherd finishing him off, but I'm worried about the inability to move him around as I'd like. Meanwhile, you'll see over here, I do send my Blood Knights over right away. I get a peek at any potential Senegor locations. I'm clear, and I'm able to actually push in whenever I choose. So I want to make sure I can isolate the Giants before I actually pull these guys in, or set up rear charges, whatever it might be, before I send them in. Now, You'll see, as I mentioned, the Necromancer does poke forward and pops a raised dead right in the middle here. And the idea behind that, you'll see I send in the charges right afterwards. The idea behind that is simple. I want to try and get some rear charges to begin with as these giants come pummeling through my lines. You'll notice that as the zombies come up, these Graveguard in the center here are charging in, and these guys are actually going to be attacked in the rear. As you can see, it does pop up, attacked in the flank, attacked in the rear. Just trying to get that morale damage in right from the get-go, and then sending the Mortis Engine in right down the center as well, just because that's where I feel like I can do the most work. It'll get the largest coverage. I don't want it to be pinned down by this giant or this giant. I don't want to go up against the Gorbel, so straight down the center makes sense. Meanwhile, you'll see the Gore Herd over here not really engaging as I pull Manfred off to the side here. These guys should have been sent around and into the rear, and this flank would have immediately been won by the Beastmen. My Crypt Horrors here would last a little bit longer, but the Graveguard there are already falling apart, as you can see. And meanwhile, on the topic of falling apart, those zombies didn't last a minute. They didn't last a handful of seconds even, but that wasn't their purpose. The idea was just to have them there to pin the enemy so that I would get a nice rear charge to begin with, and it worked out. I got a little bit of damage in there. Meanwhile, you'll see the giant is beating away at my Necromancer, but I'm okay with that for now. I want him to focus on the Necromancer so that my Skeleton Spearmen can work away, chip away at the giant, which I'm sure my opponent isn't worried about, but the Blood Knights, I need to get them in here to try and take care of that giant as soon as possible. So I'm perfectly fine with my Necromancer taking a little bit of a beating, especially because he can regenerate his health. Now, as we resume into full speed, you'll see Manfred does get into position for a Wind of Death. I'm a little nervous about being caught, so I do cast another Raised Dead. I get these zombies in there. Again, just trying to pin these guys in place. I want to hold the Bestigor in place if possible, and of course the Gore Herd are a nice bonus. And if I can also hit the Bestigor over here, I'll be very happy. So you'll see I pop the Wind of Death. Not the perfect positioning. I'd like to do it a little bit further back, but it's the best I could do. I was a little nervous of being spotted. Wind of Death does activate, and I'm happy enough. I get enough of the Bestigor Herd, and you'll see Manfred does get a decent cast out of this as the Blood Knights back there are pushing in as well, splitting them apart, one to take care of the giant, one to come in for rear charges and clean up after this Wind of Death goes down. So there you have it. The Wind of Death kicks in, and we've got the Bestigor Herd taking a decent amount of damage, and then the Gore Herd, they're taking the hit square in the chest, right across the face, like a slap, the back of my hand. And this last unit of Bestigor Herd as well, going to take a decent amount of damage. But more important than physical damage is actually the morale damage that's taking place. And you'll notice right after that Wind of Death, we've got the Bestigor Herd, both Bestigor Herd, and these two units of Gore Herd with shields retreating. They are on their way out. They are routing. So you'll see back here, I turn my Blood Knights around, and I want to try and get some side charges and finish these guys off as they are leaving. Those are very high threat units that are on their way out. The Bestigor Herd were giving me cause for concern naturally, so I'm very glad that I can get these charges in and take care of the Bestigor Herd. I do need to take care of these guys as well off in the distance, so I'm very glad that that worked out. The Wind of Death was not ideal, but it was close enough. It was a desperate Wind of Death, but it worked out. Meanwhile, you'll see we've got this unit of Blood Knights beating on the giant, while this other unit of Blood Knights, as I mentioned, giving a charge into the Bestigor Herd as they're routing the Necromancer as well, giving chase, trying to make sure these guys don't return into the fray. And you'll see we do have a Flock of Doom going down on this clump of units, but at the same time I am responding with Invocation of Nehek, currently focusing on this right flank because I'm very worried about losing this right flank very quickly to this Gorbel. You'll see my Graveguard are falling apart, very close to crumbling. In fact, they may have been crumbling for a little while there, while the Crypt Horrors are able to actually hold the Gorbel in place and get a decent amount of damage in there, especially the stat damage. Meanwhile, this Gore Herd unit finally did decide to come in from the side, but they've already taken a decent amount of a beating from the engagement. The Crypt Horrors are doing their job quite well. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Blood Knights have been pulled away from that side charge into the Bestigor Herd, trying to get them involved in the center again, and just trying to get as much work done as possible. I do pop Undeath Resurgent as well, with Manfred going into Morgr, trying to take care of leadership, sort of halfway through the battle. I'm able to target him now, so I want to dive in and hurt him if possible. And I also pop Undeath Resurgent, again, just to try and make sure these guys all stay alive. The Giants are very threatening. I do want to have my melee defense up. The Minotaurs with shields as well, very threatening to infantry units, so just want to keep my, my defenses up. Meanwhile, the Necromancer back there still chasing these guys away, trying to keep them far away, while the Blood Knights I do decide to pull away and send towards these routing units. Again, just want to make sure they stay shut down. You'll see another unit of zombies brought up here. I wanted to convert these Gore Herd from just wavering into completely shattered, so I bring the zombies in there, hoping to get sort of a surround on them, and that is enough to get them routing, so that did work out. Meanwhile, up here you'll see the Giant is now chasing after my, my Crypt Horrors. Probably would have done better against the Graveguard over here, and on the right flank, meanwhile, you'll see the Gore Herd with shield are now routing. Meanwhile, the Blood Knights had a nice time up there, taking care of the Bestigor Herd. Again, even though I'm not able to maybe completely destroy them, or I don't spend the time to completely destroy them, I want to make them ineffective. Only 23 sort of individuals left in this unit. Their health is extremely low, so I'm not worried about that unit coming back. Even if it does, it's not going to be as much of a cause for concern anymore. Meanwhile, up here, this unit of Bestial Herd as well, less than half of their health left, so I'm not too concerned. And now the Blood Knights are coming down here to try and take care of the Gorbel. Meanwhile, you'll see here on the left, I do have some units starting to crumble. It's a very precarious situation. There's 2 giants in this area. I do have the Claw of Nagash, the Mortis Engine there to provide some support, but currently it is being beat on by the giant, and that's going to do a lot of work. So it's a little concerning now, but I do need it in there to, again, cause that trickle damage and try to keep my units alive as well. And here you'll see the Blood Knights do come into the Gorbel, getting a decent charge in there. The Crypt Horrors, again, getting the not only the armor piercing, but also the poison, and the poison is doing a lot of work here. Let's kick it back to full speed, and you'll see still trying to get into Morgur with Manfred there, trying to cause morale damage. Morgur is very hard to kill, of course, unless you've got enough focus fire, but just trying to finish him off through morale damage. Meanwhile, at the same time, we see a spell that we don't get to see often enough. The Amber Spear gets shot towards the Claw of Nagash, and it actually does a significant amount of damage. Chops away about 50% of its health and reduces its morale significantly. So at this point, I'm a little concerned that my Mortis Engine is going to fall apart, and you'll see now I do have the Gore Herd with shield coming back, so I send my Blood Knights there instead. And a couple of things going on right now. As that charge hits, and I want to get a nice shot of that charge going in, so as that charge hits, trying to make sure that the Gore Herd with shield will not return to the fray, I also have my Blood Knights over here pulling away from the central engagement. As you'll see, a Flock of Doom has gone down, focusing on the Blood Knights, and it's an upgraded Flock of Doom as well. So I want to pull away, and I want to make sure that the radius stops covering all of these units, and you'll see very soon, very quickly, there you go. My units are now safe from that Flock of Doom just because I pulled the Blood Knights away from the engagement, and I also pop an Invocation of Nehek, trying to keep my units alive. It is a very dangerous situation. You'll see some of these Graveguard are very close to falling apart. They are crumbling. Again, the Skeleton Spearmen as well, a couple of hits, and they'll start crumbling too. So again, very, very important that I keep that Flock of Doom away from these guys, and they are still under the influence of Invocation of Nehek as well, so the Blood Knights themselves still very much safe. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Gore Herd has given up. They're on their way out now, but this best Gore Herd unit is able to come back. Meanwhile, a bit of mismanagement here for myself. The Necromancer is way too far away to make a difference in the battle anymore, chasing away the Gore Herd, I believe, and yeah, maybe I should have kept him a little bit closer to the engagement over here. Meanwhile, you'll see I did just command that the Blood Knights go into the Gore Herd over here, the best Gore Herd, sorry. So again, noticing that these guys are able to come in and they could be a threat, I want to make sure they're taken care of. Meanwhile, over here, Flock of Doom is gone. Blood Knights, once again, free to re-engage, and I send them in towards the Giant. It is routing right now, but I don't want it to come back. A couple of hits do a decent amount of damage off of a Giant, and it's very low on health, so I figure a decent charge is probably going to do the trick, and you'll see it very much does. The Blood Knights do come in. They get a quick surround in on the Giant, and the Giant falls right away, and again, we push into the center here, and off on the right flank here, I do bring up another unit of zombies because I notice this Gore Herd unit is willing to come back into the fray, and I want to protect my units from any rear charges. I want to make sure that they don't get flanked in any way because that does do morale damage. I don't want these guys to start crumbling. So I bring up the zombies, and they do their job. They push in, they intercept the Gore Herd over here, and you'll see the Blood Knights initially being sent in to take care of the Gore Herd, but then I turn them around to try and shut down the Giant in the center here. Mortis Engine, meanwhile, chasing after the Bestigor Herd alongside the Blood Knights, who now are going after this other unit of Bestigor Herd. And it's a close victory for my Vampire Counts. So it was a relatively short battle, and things could have gone very poorly for me. My desperate Wind of Death allowed me to take out some of the more threatening units early on, and at that point, I just had to make sure they didn't return to the fray. When Beastmen leadership goes up against Vampire Count resilience, all it takes is a few flanking maneuvers and some wind to break their resolve before my army starts to crumble. As always, for more Total War content, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Total Breakdown and my own online battles continue on, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.